Blood Wave is truly amazing. It clears every boss in seconds, is lightning fast while even speed clearing Pit 100 like it's Pit 60, with a ceiling of currently 139. It is absolutely broken and unbelievably fun to play. And to add to this, we are basically just a 2-button build. Sever for incredible mobility and Blood Wave for the destruction, which is just extremely simple while also looking bombastic. Now the basic idea for this build is to just cast 2 spells. Sever, which spawns corpses, which we can consume to cast our skeleton mages to provide us with essence regeneration. And because of this, we will automatically cast Priest with our skeleton warrior, automatic restoration, which will proc our skeleton mage. So for regular gameplay, you always have a skeleton mage. And then we have our Blood Wave. So when we cast our Blood Wave, we're going to use our resource, which in turn is going to cast our Decrepify skill and then curse enemies. Additionally, every 5 skills, we cast our Earthen Bulwark. So we have Barrier, which increases our toughness quite a lot. And we have Blood Mist for additional mobility. Then Iron Maiden is the only spell we have to additionally cast every now and then to curse enemies, which we also do for Decrepify. But that's the basic idea about the build. So once you set up everything, you cast everything one time and then you just go blasting. And you basically sustain your essence without much trouble. Now, how do you sustain your essence? You have essence regeneration on your boots as well as on your pants. Early on, you can also put this one on your helmet as well as your chest. You put some resource cost reduction on your ring instead of Starless Skies. So around 25 is enough. And then you put 2 lucky hit chance to restore primary resources on your rings, and that's it. You don't need anything else. This will, in combination with the skeleton mage, provide you with all the essence you need. And because of all the pieces, we curse enemies, deal more damage to cursed enemies, we spawn our corpses, consume our corpses, and so on and so forth. All of these pieces, as well as Iron Maiden, and so on, will provide us with a ton of additional stacks of ferocity, of overpower, of resolve, of whatever we want, which boosts our damage significantly. And as you can see here, we deal billions or trillions of damage. Currently, my glyphs are 76, 65, 60, 54, as well as 51. And there is always the possibility to just switch out Amplify for something else. Currently, I'm running Undaunted for the additional damage reduction based on our Fortify. So I'm a little bit tankier and can actually clear the higher pit tiers. Also, I don't die all the time because of the additional DR. Because you are a kind of squishy character without Tyr's Might or a chest that has Juggernaut on it to significantly increase your armor. Currently, we have 25k, which is 75% reduced incoming damage. If you now increase your reduced incoming damage by 5%, you're going to reduce the damage by 1/5 of the total damage. Now, let's have a look at our summons. We're going to use Defenders to spawn more orbs, which improve our damage through the Paragon Board. Then we have Skeletons with 20% increased overpower damage, as well as Golems, 15% increased critical strike damage. For the Mercs, we're going to use Subo for movement speed, as well as crit strike damage. Enter here for a slow, as well as a heal. This one we'll use with Injured. Next up, let's go over the skill tree. We're going to use Skeleton Mage with crit strike chance. So we always have 100% crit strike chance on our targets. Sometimes we just don't have the curse on them, which is rare, but it does happen. So this one fills the gap to always have the 5% additional. Alternatively, we can just increase the damage of the skeleton mages, but it's not significant. I like to have the additional crit strike chance. Then we have our skeleton warriors. We use healing as well as vulnerable, max out both. And then we are going to use Litany of Death. If we have Litany of Death, spawn enough corpses with Sever, which comes through the crowd control and corpse generation, we can sustain our mages indefinitely. Now, mages provide us with essence regeneration 175x, which is a significant amount. We additionally use Sever for mobility. We reduce the cost, we spawn corpses, which you consume, and we use it as a mobility spell, Inexorable Reaper upgrade. Then we use Blood Mist with mobility, movement speed, and vulnerable application, because we need to make enemies vulnerable with this build. We generate 100% overpower anyway. And we have Blood Rush. This one is converting our Blood Mist to a mobility spell with an 8-second cooldown, and we get Unstoppable. That's our Unstoppable source. Then we have both curses. We take Iron Maiden with Essence Generation, Blood Maiden, as well as Ferocity and Overpower. We generate our Ferocity stacks for this, and we get our Blood Orbs for this. And we additionally deal a little bit of damage. Then we have Decrepify by weakening and slowing enemies. For 30 seconds, we get our critical strike chance for here, so we get 100% here. Or we can also omit this one, get additional crit on the gear, and get the cooldown reduction. We also get Resolve for this one, and we have Dizzying Curse. This incurs makes enemies dazed, so they cannot attack or use skills. If we delete the enemies in 4.1 seconds, we basically never take damage. And then we have Blood Wave. We max this one out, get the damage bonus here, get the overpower overflow here, and get the upgrade to make it a core skill with an essence cost of 50. So we need to reduce the cost and regenerate enough so we can spam this one. Early on, you're going to utilize Blood Surge with the Blood Wave node as well as damage bonus and weaken. Why? Because we cannot spam our Blood Wave and we are going to miss our pants. We need the pants to make this one really pop and work. Next up, the Paragon Board. For the Paragon Board, we're going to start with the basic Undaunted rune right here. We can exchange this one for Corporal for more damage. However, I like the damage reduction because we deal enough damage anyway. Then we have Essence for additional damage. This one is in the Blood Begets Blood board, which we stack up by spawning all the Blood Orbs for the skills we use. Then we take the Bloodbath Legendary node with the Amplifier here. Now Amplify can be exchanged for Imbibber. So we use up all our potions and then we have 20% increased damage. But here we also get damage per overpower stack. Then we take Scent of Death, damage reduction and increased damage. With the Eliminator node, very easy, we just path through here. And by upgrading the normal nodes, we get the fill-in for the intelligence here. We don't pick up those nodes because there's better stuff we can pick up. Like, for example, the total armor here, live at later stages of the game. But we really need the defensive nodes here. We don't need to scale all that much increased damage. Because in the last board, in the Frighty board, we pick up the Dominate glyph, which provides us with a ton of increased damage in the form of overpower damage, 175. Now, when we combine this one with the gear we currently have, which also has damage per overpower, as well as the innate 15% damage per overpower, we currently get to 250. With enough upgrades, you can get this one much higher, up to 500, which is an insane boost to your damage. Now, how do you progress? You progress through here. You pick up all the nodes on the side and ignore the runes. Then pick up Blood Begets Blood. Then go for the next legendary node. Go for the Scent Death node. Path through here. Pick up Eliminator. And then in the last board, we swap around. And at first, we just pick Frailty. And once you have enough points to fill out the board like this, we're going to swap around the board and then put in Dominate. We focus on glyphs next. So we pick up all the glyphs. And then we pick up all the defensive nodes. In between, once you feel squishy, you also want to take all the nodes that are going to increase your survivability by maximum life or armor or resistances. Next up for the gear progression, there is a planner. This planner provides you with a step-by-step guide from tier 1, tier 12, as well as high tier pushes on how to progress with this character with the gear. It assumes you don't have any legendaries at first and progress through the game and obtain those legendaries, because Andariel is a greater boss. So you need a greater key. You cannot immediately get this one. So you're going to rely on Blood Surge at first, and then once you get Casimir's Legacy, you're going to switch to Blood Wave completely. So that's the requirement. All the mythic items are not a requirement. For the chest, Juggernaut, as well as stats like Intelligence, Maximum Life, Armor, and instead of resistances, you want Essence Generation. Same for the helmet. But for the helmet, you also want Lucky Hit Chance. And you're going to exchange this one for the aspect of Coagulation for more damage reduction. So we get the damage reduction going through Juggernaut and Coagulation. And the Essence Regeneration. The Lucky Hit Chance on the helmet is important for the procs. And instead of a ring, we're going to use a ring that's roughly going to look like this. Resource cost reduction and resource cost reduction tempered. You need around 25% to make this one really work, but this will make for a very fine addition to the build instead of the Ring of Starless Skies. And there is quite a few options here. For the ring slot, you can utilize a ton of different legendary powers. For example, Conceited because of the barrier, or Untimely Death for another option here. Why we are not using Untimely Death? Because we cannot sustain it at 100%. So it seems to have an internal cooldown. So I have never been able to manage this one at 100%. That's why I'm currently using it on a build. For attack speed, I personally am using Rathmas Chosen. This one is in a separate bucket. So even if you overcap on this one with the regular attack speed here at over 100%, those are clearly in different buckets. You can use your Rathmas Chosen, get the buff here, but it's not going to show up on a sheet. It's a really effective way to make this one feel much better and more responsive. Now, as for the stats on your gear, you want to make sure that your crit chance is above 90%. So that's the most important thing, because we are stacking so much crit damage and crit damage multiplier. We just need that. Next up is attack speed and intelligence. Those two are really important on all your gear pieces. You also have vulnerable damage multiplier here. Again here. And on the ring, there is a small caveat. You're going to utilize a maximum life roll, because we need to boost our life in some capacity to benefit from the barrier. And on your boots, you're going to utilize intelligence, maximum life, essence regeneration, and movement speed. Why the movement speed? Because we still run around despite using Sever. And you want to dodge mechanics without having to rely on a fixed distance. So when you use your Sever, you need to be very precise and it delays. And like this one, you can just run around. For your weapons, weapon damage, intelligence, maximum life, and crit strike damage. Both are really important. You also have crit strike chance here, but you have to be careful. Too much crit strike chance is wasted, so you have to manage this one with damage per overpower stack on all your gear. For example, on my second weapon, I'm still using damage per overpower stack instead of the crit strike chance because I am overcapping with the gear I currently have. Lastly, I want to talk about Casimir's Legacy. What stats do you aim for here? Essence generation is extremely important, intelligence as well. And then you have your life as well as armor here. You don't actually need the resistances here. All resistance would be fine, especially on a greater affix, because it's reducing the damage you take quite significantly, but I would prefer the maximum life here with a greater affix instead of the resistances. You still want to boost and temper your armor here, because at this point, this one is the best scaling defensive stat you can get on the build. And once you push harder pits, 120, you need to switch your offhand from an offensive one to a shield. A shield provides you with additional armor, with additional damage reduction, with additional life, and potential life regeneration. Because life regeneration with the one you get on a tree can get you to quite a significant amount, which you can then combine with the Bone Prison spell, with the Life Imprisonment, which provides you with Resource Essence generation as well as cast speed, 20% of that, which is in another bucket. We can also use it to regenerate Essence, as well as provide enemies with Vulnerable on demand. Currently, Vulnerable application is done nearly always just through Warrior, as well as Blood Mist, and we don't get it through anything else. So this one is really, really important to get going. Vulnerable uptime will help you quite a lot on the build, but that's for later pushes. But you don't actually need it at the start of progression. What would you drop at this point? At this point, I can nearly completely sustain my Essence just by using Blood Wave and having it stacked up with the Ring of Starless Skies. So I don't actually need my mage. So at this point, I could just quickly swap out my Skeleton Mage, grab the Master of Puppets to get more Skeleton Warriors to apply additional healing as well as Vulnerable. And in this case, I can go Life Imprisonment instead of the Skeleton Mage. But I still really like to use it for speed farming. At the end, you can use the Penitent Greaves to provide enemies with a shield. This will reduce their action speed, and it's going to still provide you with 15% increased damage to be dealt by them. But it's really hard to farm. What about the talismans? We're going to use the blood set. For this one, we look for blood skills on all of them. We use a +1 charm with crit strike chance, as well as maximum life on this one. It's not as important, it's just additional performance. And we're going to utilize the blessing, the red blessing. We add 4 maximum overpower charges and increase the damage per stack of overpower charges with a multiplier. However, at this point, if we assume we want to add tidal aspect to this one, we're going to increase our stacks by 4. That's 1000 additional damage and 24 additional more multiplier on this red blessing. However, that's not enough to make it worth. It's just a better option to use another more damage multiplier. However, what happens with a reduction of the requirement to have 5 of those set pieces? 4 should be enough with the Mythic Seal. This will allow you to utilize 2 unique charms. In this case, we use Red Blessing and then also utilize the Banished Lord's Talisman. With the Banished Lord's Talisman at this point, I would have 120 additional damage with all my overpower stacks. I can add additional 4, so additionally to 1000 additional increased damage and the 28% increase here, I would also get a ton of additional increases here. So at this point, it's slightly better to utilize the Tidal Blood instead of, for example, the Coalesced Blood or Tides of Blood aspect. Now, this sums up the video. If you liked what you saw, please leave a comment if you have any questions, and see you next time. Bye.